Good afternoon. It's a rather sunny bank holiday Monday here in the UK, and I wasn't expecting it to be sunny. It was supposed to rain, which is why I'd planned a video on wet weather photography gear. So I've abandoned that for fairly obvious reasons, and instead on this lovely sunny, albeit slightly windy day, I'm going to talk about the very interesting and riveting subject of battery grips. I'll try and make it interesting. I mean, maybe. For a bit of a tangent, here in the UK there's currently a bit of a push to embrace the Japanese tradition of hanami, which is where you enjoy the transient beauty of flowers, which I think basically just means viewing cherry blossom trees. So I've come prepared with an authentic drink, which is quite irritating to open if you've never come across it, but it does taste like bubblegum, so it's got that going for it. And I'm really here to do some wildlife photography, but if I see some cherry blossom trees, I'll stand under them and enjoy them and their transient beauty. Right. Right, so I look moderately ridiculous, but let's roll. It's mostly just because I've got too much stuff to carry with me. There's always something in my bag that rattles against my back, and I don't know what it is, and it's annoying. How lovely. I do, however, feel like some of the romanticism of the blossom is lost somewhat when it's on some fairly gash roundabout on an industrial estate. But it's still beautiful. Get some tasteful slow motion footage. Yeah, we'll just ignore that this is on a roundabout. I'm enjoying the transient beauty. What lovely blossom it is too. For what it's worth, I don't actually know if those are cherry trees. It could be, and that's what matters, I think. Oh, what a lovely little sparrow. It's very loud. Where is he? Oh no, this is a blackcap. He's hiding a little bit in a tree, but he's being very loud. The only irritating thing with the AF on this is that there's no quick way of swapping what subject you're on, and I've previously been doing slow motion video of my cat, so... Oh, there he goes. Gone further up the river. I'm going to go down and cross over the river and walk back up the other side of it. So yeah, on the subject of camera grips, you'll probably have noticed in any of my existing videos that I have a grip on pretty much any time I'm doing wildlife photography. And there are a few reasons for that. Most of them quite sensible, I think. So I wander up this way. So the biggest and most important reason for me is that it balances the camera. It makes a huge difference to holding a long lens. Because of the fact that you're adding weight at the base end of the camera, you're bringing the overall balance of the setup back towards your body, which is what you want if you want a comfortable setup if you do not have a grip on your camera and you have a very front-heavy lens, a good example of that might be some of the Sigma 150 to 600 lenses, which tend to be quite front element heavy. They can prove very stressful on your left arm. And when I've seen people reviewing some of those Sigma lenses in the past and complaining about the weight, I feel like that's the main stress point for them. They are putting too much load on their left arm in a position quite far from the body, like this, and that's a very difficult position to hold long term. By adding a battery grip onto your camera, the balancing point comes back to somewhere around the tripod foot on this setup, for example, and it's much more comfortable, even though the overall weight is now higher. It can seem slightly counterintuitive, but that's how it works. And that is my primary reason for using one. All the other benefits of a battery grip are nice to haves, but are very much secondary to the balance side of it for me, because I do not like using tripods for wildlife photography. I like to handhold. Saw a wren going over there. I can hear that Blackcap again, so I think he's gone back to his previous sitting point. I'm just going to see if I can see him from this side of the river. Oh, there's a kingfisher. Oh, he's gone up the other... He saw me. Well, so the kingfisher saw me, landed here and flew slightly back that way. Quite how far it's gone, I don't know. But we could hope that he hasn't gone too far and that he'll work his way back down this way. Or I can walk further up and try and find him. Oh, there's the Blackcap. Hey, matey. No, the Blackcap's gone as well now. Don't think those will come out very well. Well, I can't see him, so he may have gone quite a bit further back up the river, so let's try wandering up that way. Some of the other benefits of a battery grip, I think, are fairly obvious. Number one, you get more batteries. So in this grip, rather nicely, you've got one battery in the camera and two in the grip. And for me, with the X-H2S, that's an entire day of photography without any real trouble, which is nice. And you can plug the camera in and it will charge all the batteries in the grip and in the body, which is very convenient. And if you're doing a lot of wildlife photography and you're using things like a pre-capture mode or fast burst rates, those sorts of things, you will burn through your batteries quite fast, especially on mirrorless cameras. They do not have as good a battery life as DSLRs, where I think you could get away with it. So I do tend to use and appreciate that aspect of it, but if I'm filming, for example, I often don't use a battery grip, even though it extends the battery life, because with a shorter lens, the balance benefit is gone, and it's just heavy. And in fact, with the X-H2S with the battery grip on, it's quite a heavy camera, much more so than the OM1 was. I find the OM1 quite comfortable with the battery grip on. I think the weight of the camera is very acceptable, whereas this starts to get quite heavy. Hello, pup. One of the fairly obvious aspects, I guess, of a battery grip is that it provides you with vertical shooting controls. That's actually the area of it that I use the least, because in wildlife photography I just don't take that many portrait photos. I do occasionally, and it is very beneficial if you're waiting for a long period for something to happen whilst holding the camera in a vertical position. For example, because I'm usually handheld when I'm sat waiting for a bird like a kingfisher to dive, then having a vertical grip is extremely important, because if you don't, you're going to end up hurting your arm quite badly, holding it like this the entire time, like a gangster grip. That's not good, and it's not ergonomic. So ergonomics are important, and I do make use of it occasionally, but it's far from the critical feature of a battery grip for me. So yeah, the ergonomics of having a battery grip mean that if you've got a larger hand, you've got a whole section here that you can rest your palm against, and that's much more comfortable, particularly for me. Most cameras that don't have battery grips I find uncomfortable. The X-H2S is not too bad. Compared to everything else I've owned, I can actually use it without a battery grip and not cramp my little finger up. So overall I find that quite a nice improvement on this camera. There are some bigger bodies, like the large Panasonic cameras, so like the S1 for example, is a very big camera. That's very comfortable without a battery grip, because it has a huge body in the first place. But that's not always the case. My first camera, Canon 400D, I quite literally couldn't use it without a grip, it was too small for me. The OM1, I really struggled without a grip. The benefit of the OM1 is that it's very light, the lens is very light, and therefore it's less critical that it be ergonomic. So you find this with portable, like small travel cameras and things, like say the Fuji X100V or something, because it's got such a small lens on it and its purpose is different. It's for sort of snapshots, things like that. It doesn't need to be ergonomic, whereas the camera that you're potentially holding for many, many hours in your hands kind of has to be. Well, I think it's safe to say I lost the kingfisher. I suspect that it might have flown back onto the River Taff, which runs along down this way. Or it's just hiding out somewhere in a hedge that I can't see. So yes, if you're wondering why all of the video is in slow motion in this one, it is because I do not currently have an ND filter for this lens. It is a little bit problematic if you're doing video and photo together, because I don't really want an ND filter for photography, but by shooting video I can whack the shutter speed up if I'm doing slow motion. Oh, that robin's just regurgitating stuff at the moment, so onwards. Ooh. Oh, handsome. Yes, I've heard of this happening a few times with Fuji cameras. For things like crows, the Fuji autofocus still struggles somewhat. Oh, I'm being attacked by cherry blossom. Ooh, lovely. There's a couple of small birds up there. What are they? Blue tits? Can't see him. Where is he? Yes. Who would have thought that the blue tits would also be participating in Hanami? Well, I think that's it for me enjoying the transient nature of blue tits, enjoying the transient nature of flowers as they've buggered off. Right, well, the kingfisher hasn't come back this way, so let's just wander. Bloody pigeons. As with all things, there are of course downsides to using a battery grip. Number one being the additional size. It does make your camera notably bigger, and this will require you, if you want to put it in your bag with the grip attached, to get a bigger bag. If you yourself are looking for a bigger bag, check out my previous video, which I'll put a link to on the corner of the screen, about the Shimoda Action X50, which is what I'm currently using, which can fit a gripped body. Other bags are available. The second major downside to a battery grip is often the most irritating barrier to them these days, which is the ridiculous price. I thought that the OM1's grip was bad at about £300. This one was £400. The new one they're bringing out that does FTP uploads is £1,000 or close to it, and that's insane because they're not even very nicely built these days. They feel very plasticky. It's not like you're getting the quality and the solidity of a naturally gripped body like the Canon R3 or the Nikon Z9. It's not built like that. It's not as secure and it's not as solid, and that price feels extremely steep, and the only reason I pay it is that I personally need it, and I just adjust for it in the amount I'm willing to spend on a new camera body. There is obviously an advantage to the battery grip over a built-in grip, which is that you can remove it. So if you want to use the same camera for travel but also for wildlife photography, well, you only need one camera. Something like the Z9, I feel, might be a bit conspicuous to carry around on your person when you're just traveling in a city. Oh, hello squirrel. Now my pockets are going to be full of seed. Anyway. No, you don't get much closer than that. Oh look, he's got a grip sideways. Funny thing. He's up in that tree now. Let's go hunting for more blossom as the sun has gone in a little bit. So yeah, for every battery grip I've ever bought, I've had complaints about it. And for this one from Fuji, it's probably one of the worst ones I've bought. Not in terms of its build quality, which I think is fine, but in terms of its control layout, they've really, really messed it up. And that kind of annoys me. So as you can see here, the control stick on the X-H2S is here, and the AF on is to the right of it. When you turn it this way, the control stick is at the top, and the AF on is underneath it. Why? Just stick the control stick over there and the AF on button there. Don't get it. And there's a second mild irritation that's only really irritating to me, I suspect, but because of the location where they've put the control stick on the grip, my gloves get caught underneath it and it makes like a small tugging sensation on my glove. I'm a little bit worried that it's going to wear out the glove, in fact, so I may have to buy something to prevent that. And I've never had that happen on any other battery grip I've bought, so I'm quite impressed that they've managed to screw that up. And my camera's doing that weird thing where it turns off again. I have been having a slight issue with the X-H2S this past week or two, where when I jolt the camera like that, sometimes the camera sort of resets itself. I think it's the lens mount, and maybe with a slight bit of play in it, it messes up. But I haven't figured out what it is yet. So if anyone else has experienced this, do let me know. Otherwise I think I'm going to have to talk to Fuji about it. Okay, my camera's not doing the shutting off thing again at the moment, which is good. It's one of the irritations I have with longer lenses in particular, is that they do cause additional strain on the lens mount, even if you carry it by the lens like I always do. And it does cause a bit of looseness in the mount, and it can cause various sort of camera issues. Everything's starting to come into bloom. It's lovely. The light always catches this section so nicely in the spring as the leaves are starting to come out. It's a very interesting beak colour. What's that crow doing? I think he thinks he's a heron. It's actually hunting in the water. I don't think I've ever seen crows act like that. I have never seen a crow fish like that. Oh. Oh. Learn something new every day. So yeah, I don't have much by way of advice when it comes to battery grips. I think it's entirely down to personal preference. But if you do struggle with the weight of a long lens when doing your wildlife photography and you don't currently use a battery grip, try one out. Ideally without spending the money on it first, because they are ridiculously expensive for what they are. But I know for my own use case that if I didn't use a battery grip, I would not be able to shoot anywhere near as much. I find that shifting of the balance back towards the centre of my body is what allows me to carry even very heavy lenses. So the DSLR Sigma 150 to 600 I had was by far the heaviest lens that I've owned, and it was exceptionally front heavy, but I was able to shoot it all day because the weight was cancelled out by the balance being set back towards the body. And I wouldn't have been able to shoot that lens handheld if I didn't have a battery grip on. Yes, in the comments do let me know what you think, whether you use a battery grip or not. I'm quite interested to know how other people deal with it, with longer lenses. Personally, I feel like if I have a battery grip attached to the camera, I can even handle larger prime lenses for shorter periods of time, handheld without too much difficulty. But when that weight is too far away from the body, that's when I personally really struggle to hold those sorts of weights. And you'll notice from how I hold my camera in these videos that my tripod plate on the lens is actually where I tend to hold most of the weight most often, because it's placed further back towards the camera, and it's why those function buttons towards the front of the lens are not all that useful to me, sadly. I've got to say, the fact that this stick keeps getting stuck and pulling on my glove is really starting to piss me off. That shouldn't be a design problem. Why have you done this? What were you thinking of, Fuji? Just move it down there. God. I might actually have to look at third-party grips for this camera because I don't like that. Or I'll just super glue the stick down.